What's up, it's ENDYMION, and there's been some updates surrounding the Warhammer 40K live action series that I think we need to discuss, and why I believe it's all by Amazon's design. Beyond this, I also want to talk Star Wars, since there has been confirmation that the Acolyte will likely kill Star Wars, and be far worse in reception than The Last Jedi, and I think I might know why, but first, let's talk about Warhammer. If you didn't watch my previous video, Warhammer 40K's live action series is getting swarmed with negative fan emails that are overwhelming Amazon servers. The AI that controls and sorts Amazon's complaints sent by users is being bombarded with fans demanding that Henry Cavill should control the franchise in the live action sense. This is being demanded because the fandom does not believe Amazon and Games Workshop can realistically make a Warhammer television show that meets the expectations of the fandom at large. But also because the female custodies thing, for example, only exists because Amazon themselves demanded for the change. Meaning a lot of the problems plaguing Warhammer from a creative sense anyways have been directly caused by the involvement of Amazon's existence. Had they never signed this deal to begin with, the custody stuff would have likely never happened either. Games Workshop might be woke in a lot of ways, but they even know making custodies or Space Marines female would be akin to financial self-deletion. At least they have some common sense in their heads, but Amazon doesn't care, of course, because the message is all that matters. Anyway, the Archcast, who's a YouTuber, had some things in his leak from his credible source that was also the origin of the Amazon pushing for female custodies narrative as well. According to this source now, the Warhammer series might just be dead in the water permanently now. This was compiled by that Park Place, but here's what Arch said, and I quote, "Right now, the agreement in principle between Games Workshop and Amazon appears to be in effect. This means that a team at Amazon, a team of writers, is right now trying to write out a story that is going to be turned into the Warhammer 40K television show. They have, I believe, a few more months on this deadline for this project, and they have to hand in, and then it either has to be greenlit, or they have to have their writing date further postponed in the hope that they can produce something better further down the line, or the entire project will be shelved. Those are the three opportunities. Either they'll have a project they'll go ahead with, they'll shelve the whole thing, or they will extend the deadline to try and get a decent product going. In other words, nothing is finalized yet." Absolutely nothing. There isn't even any money for the project allocated as far as my insider can tell on Amazon's behalf. No writing staff has been truly hired, no money has been truly allocated, no plans have been truly made. End quote. This is either great news if you're a purist, or terrible news if you really wanted a Warhammer live action TV show. On the one hand, it is comforting to know that the damage hasn't truly begun yet, since Amazon is still trying to figure out what the hell they're even doing with this franchise in the first place. But it is bizarre to me that this source confirms that Amazon has yet to funnel any real money or time investment into this project. Because if you ask me, something of this magnitude is akin to Lord of the Rings and Rings of Power. And I don't mean that it needs to be ruined, but that the potential and hype of such a series existing within a beloved franchise like this, it should be a major priority for Amazon. But I think the reason why they're so indecisive is because they don't want a repeat of Rings of Power again. But the thing is, it's clear as day that no matter what Amazon really does, the end result of their time spent will likely end with a Rings of Power situation anyways. Although this entire timeline of events is weird to me, considering this was confirmed to be happening via Warhammer's blog in late December 2023. And within that blog, they explicitly state that Henry Cavill is an executive producer on the entire series. For those unaware, the difference between a producer versus an executive one is that the producers are usually on the actual set of whatever is being made from day to day. The executive producer, which is what Henry is, oversees things like the castings of the project, the marketing, the collaborating with the directors and writers to ensure that what is being made falls in line with their vision. Which means that what Amazon has technically done here is very weird on their part the more you think about it. On the one hand, they got Henry Cavill because obvious star power and fandom, that makes total sense. However, since you made him executive producer, that means technically speaking, anything that actually gets done or made within the confines of the Amazon show, it needs to get his okay first. Which, if you're Amazon and you're full of activists like the ones who did Rings of Power, you can see how this is a problem for them. Henry, in a way, is legally binded by contract to, for lack of a better word, be a shield between the activist weirdos at Amazon and them actually getting the funding to make their blasphemous woke Warhammer show. To show you what I mean, for Rings of Power, that show was executively produced by J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay. They have apparently, according to rumors, been kicked out of Rings of Power Season 2 after the disastrous reception to the original season, which, I mean, can you really blame Amazon for that? Anyway, in Rings' case, the previous executive producers had final say on everything. And looking at their previous work, it makes total sense why those two got kicked. Every movie they worked on ended up uncrediting them and rewriting anything they actually wrote for those projects. Some movies they wrote original drafts on until they were changed included Star Trek Beyond, Godzilla vs. Kong, and Disney's Jungle Cruise. And like I said, whatever these two hacks wrote, every one of these movies took what they did and they completely changed it. Most likely because whatever these guys originally wrote was complete shit. To this day, I have no idea how these two guys somehow landed on the job of being the executive producers of Rings of Power. But their work speaks for itself. The show was their vision, and not even 50% of the audience finished the show's first season. So all of this is to say that Henry Cavill is the equivalent to these guys, except as far as we know right now, Henry is the sole executive producer on this project. Of course, I cannot confirm that 100%, but I can only make this assumption based on the information available to us, and no other person has been confirmed to hold the same power as Henry in this regard. So, if that is true, 100%, which I will go with for the sake of this video anyways, then it stands that whatever Amazon has pitched or done in regards to what they want to do with this show, Henry has likely refused it because he legally can. I can almost guarantee you that Amazon wishes they never made Henry an executive producer on this project, because it's likely causing them all sorts of problems for the right reasons in fans' eyes. They probably want to turn it into garbage and just use the franchise as a vehicle at best. And Henry is likely looking at their decisions like female space marines and more and going, what the hell are you trying to do here? Because none of this is Warhammer, although we do know that in the latest Adeptus Custodes lore book, it is confirmed in there that women apparently can be Custodes now too. And that book is very recent, of course, but this confirms my other suspicions to a degree as well, which is that when Games Workshop signed this deal with Amazon, which was very clearly a bad deal that was agreed upon far too quickly for all parties involved, within that agreement, it likely allowed Amazon to alter Games Workshop's IPs outside of just the television shows. Meaning Amazon could theoretically influence the actual source material directly and alter it without someone like Henry Cavill's consent or oversight. Why, you may be asking? The reason for this is likely because Henry's powers over Warhammer 40K begin and end with anything being made in a live action or animated sense on Amazon Prime. But he cannot enact his influence or power on Amazon if they go around him to the source material and do their stuff there instead. So technically, because of Henry, Amazon likely cannot make Space Marines female in live action. But they could sway Games Workshop directly into doing it themselves instead, which could in time break down Henry's power or defenses, and then they can do whatever they want. We also don't know how long Henry's contract is either, by the way. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that his contract for this series is 5 years long. Again, we don't know, but let's go with it. That means Amazon cannot do whatever they want with Warhammer in a live-action sense because of Henry's power. However, if they stall for time, refuse to allocate resources, and instead just hold onto the property, and the deal past those 5 years or however long Henry's contract is with Games Workshop, they could then refuse to renew his contract, therefore no longer making him executive producer on the series. Which then, as you may expect, would mean Amazon could put a yes man in the executive role, open the floodgates to the warp, and woke chaos will reign supreme. And because Games Workshop is so headstrong and desperate to get their IP into the mainstream akin to Star Wars or Marvel, they are likely willing to do whatever they can in order to get Amazon to make the show, because they likely think, well, if the Fallout show can increase the sales of that franchise by thousands of %, imagine the cash bonuses for Games Workshop's executives if a similar outcome was reached with Warhammer 2. So what I think is happening here is that Amazon is deliberately self-sabotaging this entire series because they realize they screwed up by making Henry the sole executive producer. And I don't mean they screwed up as in wronging the fans. They're mad the ink has dried and this guy, who is anti-woke, is standing in their way of complete control like they have on Rings of Power. And the only way Amazon and their cohorts seem willing to actually go through with this project is if they are able to do whatever they want with the source material. And that unfortunately means, in a sense, removing Henry from the picture. So if I had to guess, Amazon will either shelve this until his contract runs out and then destroy it. Or they will follow Henry and actually make a good show. Just kidding, that won't happen. This is Amazon after all. But honestly, if this ends up being the end game of this all, it wouldn't surprise me. Would I be disappointed? Absolutely. But sadly, it's on par with everything else. Now, let's get into another nuclear topic. So recently, I was on Valiant Renegade's livestream. We were talking about all sorts of things. Eventually, Alan from Film Threats came on to talk about Star Wars The Acolyte, which Alan had already seen the first 4 episodes of. Obviously, he was under NDA, so he couldn't just tell us exactly what happens or anything like that. But there was an interesting moment during the livestream where Alan was saying that episode 3 of The Acolyte made him officially hate and no longer care about Star Wars anymore. I then asked him a question, so in a weird twist, let's watch myself ask Alan a question. So here you go.
So when you see when it happens or when it's said, you kind of understand why it was said and the context behind it. So
I just want to remind,
it's not as bad as we're making it out to be.
Whatever this is that's happening in episode 3, is it so? Do you think that the backlash will be worse than The Last Jedi?
I think so. I mean, like I said, if for us pre-Disney Star Wars fans, this I don't know how we could accept this as Star Wars and move forward with it.
Okay? I want to go back to what that question. And Endymion, please ask that same question again, and Alan, please answer it again.
Yeah.
Is it worse than The Last Jedi? Yeah.
Is it worse than The Last Jedi?
Or I think will the reaction to it be worse or the same? Yeah, and you said probably. So I was like, whoa.
Well, okay, so I mean, okay, so I'll say in a blanket sense, this is worse than The Last Jedi. At the same time, though, millions of people watched The Last Jedi. Compared to this, millions of people will not be watching this.
Granted, with Last Jedi, we didn't know going into it.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, they hadn't burned so many bridges at The Last Jedi versus now, just to get people to watch this.
And as you heard, Alan confirms that he believes what happens in the 3rd episode of this Acolyte show will have nuclear level reactions from the fandom. And later on in the live stream, he theorizes that whatever it is that happens here will kill Star Wars for legacy fans for good. The only cryptic hint that he seemed to be giving us in The Acolyte is hinting at within Ahsoka, another Disney Plus show. I tried to skirt around his NDA to get some nugget of info, but he did cryptically state that after episode 3, the Force is definitely female. So, what does that mean? Well, I have a theory. So, in Ahsoka, near the end of that abysmal show, Baylan Skoll sees on the planet Peridia statues depicting the Father. So, let me lore dump a little bit on you guys if you don't mind. So in Star Wars The Clone Wars, there's a few episodes where a certain trio of characters are introduced, called the Father, Son, and Daughter. Within this lore, apparently, the Son is the dark side, the Daughter is the light side, and the Father exists to keep the balance between both sides of the Force. These immortal beings came from a planet called Mortis, which according to the lore exists outside of the natural confines of physical space. Mortis somehow exists outside of everything, the galaxy, the universe. It's basically its own pocket dimension, for lack of a better word. It's hinted within this story that Mortis and the trio are the source and origin of the Force as a power in general. And from what I understand, again, correct me if I'm wrong of course, but how I understood it is that when a Force user taps into, let's say, the dark side of the Force, they are essentially communing with the Son. And with the light, they commune with the Daughter. In the Clone Wars, the Father contacts Anakin, Kenobi, and Ahsoka. And he sees Anakin as the chosen one who will bring balance to the Force, which is just another way of saying the Father wants Anakin to replace him as the new Father. Anyway, by the end of this whole thing, the Daughter dies, and so too does the Son and Father. This means that the entities, I guess, that embody each of these concepts like dark and light and balance are now completely out of whack. And obviously we know going forward that Anakin becomes Vader until eventually Luke technically brings balance again when Vader or Anakin dies. Palpatine is dead, except not really, because somehow Palpatine returns without explanation, but you get the idea. So based on what Alan was hinting at when he said the Force is officially female, it got me thinking. And I think I know what he's insinuating. Of course, I cannot confirm this 100% as of the release of this video. The first 2 episodes of The Acolyte will go live. And according to Alan, the first 2 episodes are typical Disney Star Wars, nothing crazy to write home about. However, next week, as of the making of this video anyways, episode 3 will launch next Tuesday. That's the one Alan says will cause the fandom to turn on Disney unlike any other. So why? What could be happening? My guess is that Kathleen Kennedy and Leslie Headland are going to canonize the concept of the son, daughter, and father in a much more literal sense. And I think what Alan is hinting at is that because the daughter represents the light side of Mortis, that female Force users will intrinsically be far more adept and powerful when it comes to using the light side of the Force over their male Jedi counterparts. And I think what the show might allude to is that in order for the Jedi to be led into a new golden age, it is without a doubt only possible as long as a woman is the chosen one or the leader of the Jedi. Since Jedi obviously harness the light and Sith the dark, they confirm this to an extent since the most powerful Sith usually anyways are almost exclusively men. And since the son embodies the dark side, that makes his connection as a man to that side mean the dark side is more powerful in the hands of men over women, which explains stuff like Palpatine, Vader, and so on being so powerful via the dark side. This would also technically explain why Rey is able to overpower Palpatine in Rise of Skywalker, because she is not only all of the Jedi at that point, as in there isn't any other prominent Jedis that we know about existing during Rise besides Rey, but that she is able to overpower Palpy simply because the light is channeled through the daughter, who's a woman obviously. And so is Rey. Therefore, the most powerful Jedis can never be men, but only women, hence the Force is female. I think what Kathleen Kennedy and Leslie Headland are hinting at here is that ultimately Star Wars is canonizing the concept that women by default are more powerful Jedi than men can ever be. And the only way for the galaxy to be balanced is if women lead the galaxy over men. This can be the only explanation I could come to in my own head as to what Alan is referring to based on the cryptic ways he was wording things. If the Force is female, that could only mean women are the best Jedis by default. But this is also funny to me because this means Disney is confirming that genders do have differences and that men and women are not the same whatsoever. Which kinda goes against their agenda of pushing woke gender stuff, but I doubt they thought that far. I really can't think of any other reasoning for why Alan would say this will have a bigger pushback than The Last Jedi. I really can't. There doesn't seem to be any other reason for this being the case. If what he says is truly tied to Ahsoka, it has to be the Mortis gods and all of that. I already hate the idea of the son, father, and daughter thing too. I think giving an origin or face to something as mysterious as the Force already is stupid as well. It removes the mystery, and to me the Force was just meant to be the cosmic power of the universe. And the beings that were born within that universe could wield the Force because they too are children born of the universe too. And it was all just sort of how organic beings could tap into this magical, spiritual energy, and there's no real need to say this is where it comes from. It's sort of like if The Walking Dead told you where the zombie virus came from. No matter what they would say, a lot of us would go, well, that's stupid and for good reason. We don't need everything spelt out, so I think the Mortis gods thing is pretty lame already. Now, could they make good villains for a new trilogy of films? Yes, I think immortal beings that are so in tune with the Force they have become essentially false gods could be interesting. Your new empire could instead be a religious cult, and it could be interesting to witness. But to say these things are the source of the Force, hey that rhymed, I don't think that's a good idea personally. And if I could, I would retcon it to say they are just very powerful Force users, but they are not the actual source themselves. Like I said, I really don't know what Alan knows 100% of course. So I don't want anybody watching this to think that he told me secretly. He did not. I can confirm that. I am simply just offering my speculation as to what I think could be the case. I usually have a good sense of knowing things when it comes to my gut, and right now my gut is telling me that I'm pretty close to the truth here. It also seems to be deliberate that many of the key players in the Acolyte are women as well. And I think that's done on purpose because obviously Leslie Headland is a gay woman who loves female characters because activism, but I think it's also to show how when women exclusively tap into either the light or dark sides of the Force, the power difference is vastly different. Of course, as of now, I cannot confirm this until next week when episode 3 airs, but what do you think could be worse than The Last Jedi? What could be the reason for such a reaction in this day and age? Is being gay mean your Force powers are stronger? Is it being a woman? Or is it something else entirely? Let me know in the comments below. As for Warhammer, I'll keep my ear to the ground for you all and I'll let you know if anything else happens the moment it does. Soon enough, we'll have plenty of nonsense to dread through, but for now, I think this is enough. Thank you for watching, subscribe, share, and like the video, and thanks to my patrons too. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next one.